Today we're going to look briefly at every single troops choice in the game, and talk about which are the best and worst deals in terms of actual money for points in game. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. It's an often debated subject about which armies in 40k are better value in terms of money for points on the tabletop. There is a very wide deviation in how many points buying a box of Warhammer will put on the table for you, and for this video I've spent a few happy hours going through every single troops choice in the game in Warhammer 40k and working out how many points they cost versus how much that box costs. For the purposes of this video, I've just equipped all of the troops choices with their most basic and cheap weapons, just for ease of comparing fairly, although I do know that sometimes you want to give some of the troops more fancy gear. I've been primarily working in pounds, as I come from the UK, but I've also included the number of points per dollar as well for people who live in the USA. The main metric that we're working on is points per pound or points per dollar, so if a box has a higher points per dollar ratio, it'll mean that it's better value because per dollar you've put more points on the table. We're going to start by the best value kits in this matrix and make our way through to what I believe to be the most expensive troops in the game. So before we start, I challenge you to try and predict which faction has the most expensive troops per point and which faction has the best value troops per point. We're about to see the best value one, so make your predictions now, and maybe leave your guesses down in the comments if you're particularly confident. Okay, so as I calculated, the best value troops per point in Warhammer 40k are the Custodes Custodian Guard. I'll be honest, I wasn't entirely surprised by this outcome. Points-wise, they're big meaty models that are expensive to put on the tabletop in terms of points, far more akin to the Elite's choices in other books. It means that you need relatively few of them, and they also come in a big 5 model box for just £35, which by Games Workshop standards really isn't a bad deal at all, netting you 245 points per models when they're equipped with Guardian Spears, their cheapest loadout. These ones give you a very decent 7 points per pound invested, and they're certainly one of the reasons why Custodians are one of the cheapest armies that you can collect in Warhammer 40k at the moment. So they're the best, but let's see some of the other better choices. So other factions that have it easy in terms of points per pound. First of all, we have the Primaris Infiltrators. Their box costs the same as the Intercessors, but they're a lot more points per model, having fancier special rules. This is even for the multi-part plastic kit. You can get them as the easy build set as part of Start Collecting Vanguard Primaris Marines, and get this ratio even better. This really isn't too bad considering that they're very recent sculpts, and a couple of squads of these could easily get you a Space Marine force together quite quickly. Next up we have the Necron Warriors, which are a far older kit. This box gives you 12 warriors for £22.50, putting them at 5.9 points per pound, which is already good in itself, but you also get some Scarab Swarms included in that, and I haven't included them for the purposes of this comparison, seeing as we are solely focused on looking at the troops, but if you did include them, then they'd put them to the best value box on this list, surprisingly even better than the Custodes. To be honest, Necron Warriors aren't exactly the strongest troops choice in the game. I think it's just as indicative of the fact that they haven't seen points drops where a lot of other factions have, that puts them this high on the list. Next up we have Grey Knight Terminators. In a similar vein to the Custodes, a relatively big box containing expensive elite models makes for a good deal. The Primaris Incursors are the same box set as the Infiltrators, but just building the very slightly cheaper points-wise Incursor models, which is why they don't do as well, but give you another decent deal. Next we have Thousand Sons Rubric Marines, which are another decent win, again being pretty recent plastic sculpts, and getting 10 of them for just over £30 gives you a 5.1 points per pound ratio, which is decently competitive with the other best options. I was slightly surprised to find the Primaris Intercessors here as well, particularly as their multi-part plastic kit is £35 and isn't the most cheap ever, but at 17 points per model they still managed to break through quite well. This is particularly impressive seeing as you can get the easy build sets of them, and that could be significantly cheaper if you buy them through Dark Imperium or No Fear or something, and you can get them together for even cheaper. Moving down the list we have another few good choices here. The Grey Hunters Wolfpack box is actually cheaper pounds per point than the standard Tactical Marine box, mainly because it's a slightly older kit, but still comes with an absolute ton of Space Wolf parts and upgrades. Tyranid Gene Stealers are reasonably expensive in model terms, and again a fairly old kit, so quite cheap at £20 for the box of 8. The Grey Knight Strike Squad Marines are a little bit more expensive than some, but again they're very elite models with a high points cost to boot, so do quite well, and the standard Tactical Marines do well as well, even when just armed with bolters, and they could cost more if you gave them some upgrades. I've included Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights on the list as well. I know they're not technically troops, but they are the core unit of that faction, and this is looking at the worst possible scenario for Chaos Knights if you're buying their core Knight box and equipping it just with close combat gear, making it the equivalent of a Knight Gallant, the cheapest Knights in points that you can buy. Even then it doesn't do too badly, and if you did make one of the more shooty Knight variants, then again it would get better. The Imperial Knight box is slightly worse than this at 3.9 points per pound, because it's very slightly more expensive as it makes a bunch of different Knight versions I think. Exactly the same on 4 points per pound we have Drukhari Witches and Plague Bearers, both of whom you get 10 for £20, although admittedly this is partly the fault of Chapter Approved, which will put Plague Bearers up a point. As we continue, we're getting to the peak of the distribution, with most Games Workshop troops choices being between 3 and 4 points per pound. We've got Orc Boys here, their kit value being a bit better because they get 11 on the box including the knob. Cataphren Destroyers are here as well. They're quite expensive and you only get 3 of them, but along with the Custodies, they're the most points intensive models on the list. From Chaos Demons, we've got Bloodletters, Pink Horrors, and Blue and Brimstone Horrors, all on very similar value. Eldar Guardians are also here as well, though they do better if you included the heavy weapons platform, and Plague Marines also make an appearance. We've also got Deathwatch Veterans at 3.3 points per pound, though these guys in particular could go up a lot if you start arming them with frag cannons and things. You really can make the Deathwatch kill teams cost incredibly expensive amounts of points if you want to, which would make them far more valuable on this list. Moving on, we have Necron Immortals, Chaos Cultists, which are interestingly only available as the 5 monopose models for £6, and Thousand Suns Zangors at 3.2, though if you did want to buy the expensive auto pistol upgrade set for them, that would put up their price significantly. Hovering at around about the 3 point per pound mark, we have Skitarii Vanguard, Space Marine Scouts, Chaos Space Marines with their fancy new plastic kits, Nurglings from Chaos Demons, and Dark Eldar Kabalite Warriors. We also have the Poxwalkers here, which again are an easy build kit outside Dark Imperium or something, costing you £10 per 6, or exactly 3 points per pound. Incidentally, 3 points per pound, to put it into whole army terms, means that if you were trying to buy 2,000 points of this one troop unit, you'd be paying £666. So we're starting to look at some quite high priced units here, if we're focusing mainly on the troops. Getting more expensive still, we come on with Demonettes, being worse value than the other demons as they're 6 points a model rather than 7 or 8. And equal with them are Tyranid Hormagaunts. Crude Carnivores are old miniatures that come in a very big box, but now they went down to 4 points a model, they're still not the best value in the world. Skitarii Rangers are worse value than the Vanguard, being 1 less point per model, and Harlequin troops are here also at 2.6 points per model, though this is just when they're equipped with pistols and close combat weapons. Again, they're likely to be given all sorts of fancy combat equipment, which would make them better. Cataphren Breachers and their arc rifles are down at this level. Cataphren Breachers at £35 for 3 of them are down at this level as well. They're really not all that expensive points wise, and of course they're built from the same kit as the Destroyers. This new very shiny Battle Sister squad that you can see on screen now costs £35 for 10, putting them at 2.5 points per model, as again they're really not all that expensive when you just give them the bolters. Admittedly I am a big fan of the new sculpts, and they do give them a couple of cherub options as well. We're now starting to get into the real luxury options. We've got Eldar Rangers and their Finecast kits for £25 for 5 of them, or Gretchen for £12 for 10, although these vary heavily as to depending on whether or not you count the runt herd in that. If you want to field absolutely loads of Gretchen, then the runt herds are sort of wasted. They're fairly bad value just for the grot models per point, but if you did want to field the runt herd, it's over twice as good because it's more points than the rest of the grot squad combined. We've got Tyranid Termagants here, and again they get a little bit better if you include the Ripper Swarm that comes with them. Eldar Dire Avengers, which are £22.50 for 5 of them. I do remember the time when Games Workshop used to sell 10 of these guys, and then just cut the number of models in the box down in half in one fell swoop. Tau Strike Team Fire Warriors are now a bit more expensive with their new shiny kit, being 2.3 points per pound, although again this one does get significantly better if you use their little turret and the drones attached with the kit, and to be honest all Tau players love their drones these days, so it might be fairer to put them a bit higher up. Genestealer Cult Neophyte Hybrids are £25 for the 10 of them, and as they're just 50 points, that's 2 points per pound, which if you fielded an army of nothing but Neophyte Hybrids, that'd be £1,000 for a 2,000 point force. Those Genestealer Cultists just aren't cheap. Level with them are the Drukhari Racks for £22 for 5 of them, also giving them a 2 point per pound ratio, certainly a lot more than their Kabalite or Witch Cult counterparts. We're now getting into the absolute most expensive Games Workshop troops. In fact, there's only one Games Workshop kit that I haven't included on the list so far. These are the rest of the top 5. In 5th place we have the Imperial Guard Infantry Squad, which is £20 for 10 models. Technically they are equal with the Racks and the Genestealer Cult Hybrids, but they come with less expensive upgrades in the box, and if you want heavy weapons or things you'll have to buy them separately. So for me they win out, particularly as you're going to be wanting so many of them as Imperial Guard. In 4th place we have the Tyrannid Warriors, who if you build them for close combat and just take Scything Talons, then they're £32.50 for a 54-point squad of 3 warriors. You really are paying an absolute ton for them in this configuration. I know it would be a fair bit better if we gave them Devourers or other heavy weapons, but frankly whichever way we arm them, they're still not going to be great, and if you do want them for close combat, you're paying through the nose. 3rd on the list we have the Militarum Tempestus Scions, who've managed to drop to this low on the list thanks to their repeated points cost drops from chapter approved. You only get about 1.5 points per pound invested if you're just giving them the hotshot lasguns, which are a pretty reasonable choice at the moment. So if you wanted 100 points of Scions like this, you'd be paying over £60. You can get them a little bit cheaper in their Start Collecting Scions box, but that does have the issue of coming bundled with other units. In 2nd place we have Eldar Storm Guardians, who if you want to field Storm Guardians with the actual kit these days, you have to both buy a Guardians box and then buy a Storm Guardians upgrade frame separately. These will set you back £33.50, which will build you 8 6-point Storm Guardians, and then also a Guardian Defender heavy weapon platform that you can't even use in the squad. I think that these guys are definitely a strong contender for converting your own. It's just an eye-wateringly expensive price for a very, very old kit indeed. So which is the single most expensive plastic kit for troops produced by Games Workshop? Also by coincidence the only one that you haven't seen so far yet. Okay, so the winners are the Genestealer Cult Acolyte Hybrids, who are £25 for 5 of these guys, and at 7 points per model, they very slightly edge out the Storm Guardians for the crown. To add insult to injury, the basic loadout with just the Rending Claw is one of the most effective ways to field them, meaning that if you want to fill out a sizable amount of your army with these disturbing mutated folk for 105 points of bare bones Acolytes, which are 3 squads, then you'll be paying a whopping £75. Again, they can be slightly more expensive with gear if you go giving a load of them mining weapons and things, but the mining weapons aren't enormously expensive and they're still pretty bad on this list. So in terms of Games Workshop plastics, they are officially the worst, but I thought we'd just have one more honourable mention. I'd like to just have a short silence in memory of the bank accounts of the people who collect Deathcore of Krieg at £46 for a standard infantry squad, meaning that they're barely over 1 point per pound. I hope you enjoyed the short silence. Yes, Deathcore of Krieg are incredibly expensive, but they really are on a whole other level compared with even the most expensive Games Workshop kits. Some of their other units, such as the Death Riders, are absolutely no better. So if you are collecting a faction with expensive troops choices, remember that it could always be worse. I hope you've enjoyed the little rundown of troops choice value. It was interesting finding out exactly which ones are the best value and by how much, although my head's a little bit too full of numbers right now. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for more 40k content every day. And if you'd like to support the channel, I do have a Patreon page, and the link is down in the description. Making all of these videos does take quite a lot of time, so if you're finding the content entertaining or useful, any support for the channel will be greatly appreciated, as it's the thing that keeps these videos coming. Of course, a massive thank you to all the generous people who are helping to support the channel. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope to see you guys next time.